If you want to add a Concept2 into your gym setup, but you don't want to pay full price, and so you're scouring Facebook, Craigslist, all the different marketplaces for a used one, this video is for you. We are going to give you a used buyer's guide, how to evaluate a used Concept2 machine, so you know whether or not you're buying a fantastic deal or a lemon. I regularly get contacts about people who are wondering if they're going in for a good deal on a used machine. What's a good price? What should I be looking for? I figured it's time. Let's put an actual guide together. At the end of this, I'm gonna give you a download below where you can just download a PDF and a checklist that you can use to evaluate any used machine you've come across. I would encourage you to take it with you when you go to purchase the machine. And then you can actually look through, are all of these things ticked off so that I know what I'm getting? Let's just put knowledge and power into your hands. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm Shane Farmer. This is Dark Horse Rowing, where you build the life that you wanna live. And we just happen to use rowing usually to get you there. So you're in a place to buy this potentially used machine. You've evaluated what's in your budget, that you do want one, and then you start scouring. There are tons of places that you can look. It's basically coming down to any used marketplace wherever you are. With that being said, Concept2s get snapped up really quickly. However, because of that, it's really easy to want to just buy the next one that comes up. It's also smart of you, though, to take some time to actually look at it, evaluate it, and make sure that what you're purchasing is a wise choice. So let's dig into all of the factors that you should consider when you're looking at a used machine and what that's gonna mean for you on the back end when you're negotiating and actually making a deal. Okay, so thing number one we're going to look at is the monorail. It's a purely visual assessment that you can make and gather a decent amount of information about the machine. The first thing you will check on the monorail is its cleanliness factor. Is it just clean metal, or is it covered in gunked on black stuff? Now, I just did a minor cleaning of my machine, and I just wanted you to see that is what comes off on just a basic regular usage. So a little black grime is fine. If it's covered, well, you may have a little bit more work on your hands. So that's thing one. Number two that you're going to check is that the actual monorail, this silver piece, is still glued down and attached firmly. I've seen machines where it is starting to separate and come off. It's not a game changer, but it means that that is definitely going to need to be replaced. So that's thing number two to check. And number three, when it comes to the monorail, is how does the seat slide? And this is as simple as giving the seat a move back and forth. Does it slide without any audible clunks? And then a great test is if the machine is on a level. If you take the seat all the way to the back and let go, it should roll forward under its own power because there's a slight cant to the monorail. So if you can take the seat back, let go, and it slides under its own power, you know that the wheels of the seat are tracking well, you know that the monorail is clean and free of gunk. But if it stops or if it just doesn't move, you know that either something in the wheel system is backing it up, or that this is so dirty that it can't roll cleanly. An easy way as well to feel it out is just to get on and sit on the seat and roll back and forth. You should never feel any kind of clunks. You shouldn't feel a dut as you're rolling up and back and forth on the seat. It should be a nice, smooth runway for you. Thing number two that you're going to consider is what's happening with the flywheel. There are three things that I actually want you to look at. Number one, the mesh cage surrounding the flywheel housing. It's perforated because it lets air in and out of the machine. Now, depending on what type of machine, model A, B, C, D, or E that you are buying, it's going to look slightly different. But one way or another, there's going to be, if you're buying an A or B, it's gonna not matter as much. But take a look at the metal here. Few things to consider. What is the cleanliness level of this entire flywheel housing? Do you see a fair amount of dust built up around it? Can you see dust filling the perforated holes here? Do you see dust on the side of the damper setting wheel over here? Bring a flashlight, and if you shine a flashlight through, so you take this all the way up to a 10, it really opens up the side of the flywheel housing. Stick a flashlight in there. It'll be able to show you if there's a healthy amount of dirt and dust built up inside here as well as on the exterior. If you see a large collection of dust, you know that that's going to need a decent cleaning, and it also just tells you that whoever had this before didn't necessarily know that they had to maintain that piece of the machine. The other thing to consider when you're looking at this metal cage that wraps around the flywheel is take a look for rust. Peek all the way 360 degrees around it and see if you notice any rust spots. If so, that's a decent indicator of what kind of condition or treatment this machine has had before. And thing number 3 actually leads us into our next phase of analyzing your used machine purchase, which is the drag factor and what the drag factor is when it comes to your high and your low settings on the damper setting. All right, so let's lead that into section 3, looking at the monitor. Thing number 3 to consider, as I mentioned as we were finishing up with the flywheel, is your performance monitor, the PM. There are a few things to consider here. Let's just start with, does the monitor match the machine? Meaning, does the age of the monitor match the appropriate machine? If it's a model A, then you're going to be looking at a PM1 that's on the machine. If it's a model B rower, then you should have a PM2. If it's a C, then a PM3. And if it's a D, it could be a PM3, 4, or 5. But just know that those are the general model ranges of the performance monitor that will associate with that particular machine. Now, if you have a PM5 on a model A, B, or C, that is totally fine as well. It just means that that person knew enough to upgrade their monitor and retrofit it to their machine. That's actually probably a good sign because it means that that person knew enough about their machine to do an upgrade, which could play out in your favor. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we can check the odometer on a PM3 or newer, meaning we can tell how many meters have been put onto this monitor over its lifetime. So to check the odometer on your machine, again, it's gonna depend on what kind of monitor you have, PM3, 4, or 5. The directory has changed a little bit, but for the most part, it's going to be under more options. For me, it's under utilities, then more utilities, and it's almost always under product ID. And then you're going to do more information. And at the very bottom, it's going to give me the lifetime meters. Now, Concept2 was kind enough to send me a PM5 V2, which just has an upgraded Bluetooth chip inside of it. So my monitor does not match the age of the machine, despite it still being a Model D, a black Model D. So my lifetime meters on this monitor are 262,810 lifetime meters. What that tells you is how many meters that machine has accumulated. It's essentially like reading the odometer on a car. And it's also good to know what's an acceptable range of meters that you can have on a machine and it's still quality. I would argue that up to 4 million, 5 million meters, you still have a good machine because they're so indestructible. It's not like things start to really fall apart once you hit 4 or 5 million meters. But if you pick up a machine, say you're buying it from a gym, and it has 25 million meters on it, that means that they used it a lot. And you can probably expect, if it was in a group setting, that there's going to be some impact from that. So that's just something for you to note. Now finally, tying back to the flywheel, as I talked about earlier, we're just going to check the damper set or the drag factor associated with this flywheel. Now the range of acceptable drag factors on a Concept2 would be in the 90s up to the 210 plus range, so that's an acceptable range. So what we're looking for is if I test drag factor at a 1 on the damper setting and at a 10 on the damper setting, am I hitting an acceptable range? Or if it's very low, typically it'll be low on the top end, that tells you that flywheel's really dirty and needs to be cleaned. So how we do that, from the main menu, you go to more options and then display drag factor. Again, on a PM3, PM4, PM5, these menu options have shifted slightly, but display drag factor is what you're looking for, and it's typically under the options menu. You'll go to display drag factor, you'll set the damper setting down at a 1, make sure you keep your feet on the ground, and then all you need to do is move the handle. It doesn't matter how hard you pull, you'll get the same results. So down on a 1, on this machine, I'm seeing 87, 86. Now if I take full strokes, okay, so I retract my former statement about the range. I'm in the 80s down here at a 1, so that's the low end possibility. Now if we take this all the way up to a 10, we do the same thing, move that flywheel, and this is gonna give us the top end range. Right now I'm hitting 214, 210. So again, that's my top end range. If it's short on either end, you know something is happening internally that is causing slippage of the flywheel, which is something you're going to have to remedy eventually. Next, what we're going to look at on the monitor is just, is it free of general defects? Things to look for. Is the screen off kilter or not in the right place? Are there little black smudges in the screen? Are there paint marks on the monitor? All of these things are indicative of just some kind of abuse that the machine has received. Often the screen can just slowly drop inside the monitor. We don't want that. Any little inky looking spots, that means that there was some kind of impact generally that did that, or perhaps water that damaged it. If there's paint on the outside, that just means that generally it was dealt with pretty rough, like slammed against a wall or equipment hit it or things like that. At the end of the day, you have to make the decision as to how much that's worth it to you, but it's definitely something to pay attention to. And then finally, a good overall check. Number one, does the monitor turn on? Number two, if it does, make sure that you get into the battery compartment and make sure there's no battery acid leakage in there, because sometimes old batteries tend to leak. You don't want to have to deal with a leaky battery acid compartment back here, because that could definitely undo the monitor, which means that you're going to be in for buying a new monitor. So pay attention to that as well. Next up, we're going to take a look at your chain on this machine, and we need to evaluate it from a few standpoints. Number one, how does that chain look overall? Is it free of rust? Can you tell that it has some level of recent oiling on it? Other things to look for is when that handle's pulled all the way out, make sure that every link in the chain appears straight. If there are any weird kinks in the chain, that's indication that it's dried up and it's starting to stick. Again, not the end of the world, as with so many of these things, but the general condition of the chain is important. You need it to not be rusty. You need it to not be falling apart, because this is a really critical piece of equipment for the machine. If this fails, a lot of bad stuff can happen. So we just want to avoid a bad chain. It's easily replaceable in the event that something is bad with it, but it's just good to know and good to go into. Other things you can check out: what's the condition of the U-bolt connecting the chain to the handle? I have seen these get bent before, especially in heavy gym usage situations. So that's just something to check out. Again, U-bolts are replaceable, but all of these things lead you to understand how much this machine has truly been used. If that U-bolt's clean, good to go, the bolts all look good down here, then you should be fine. Other things you can check out are the condition of the cage, or the rectangle down here where the handle goes into the machine. Check for damage. If there's damage, that tells you that, again, usage-wise, people have let go of the handle or been smashing the handle into the cage, have taken chunks out of it. These are all signs indicating what kind of use your machine has seen. And the easiest and best way for you to assess the level of the chain or the quality of the chain is to just use the machine. Get onto it. And when you're taking that, you can be analyzing two perspectives. How does the seat move? And then how does the handle move? Does it move freely? Do you have any loss of tension as you're pulling the chain? If so, you know that you're gonna have something to deal with. As you go to take the stroke, if it slips, and normally on most machines you don't feel a slippage, well, there's gonna be something that you have to deal with on the maintenance side of that. So that's good indication that something internally might be happening. So just row it, right? At the end of the day, you do have to take it for a test drive. Row the machine, feel the chain, pull it all the way out to the end, gently, of course. Pull it all the way out to the end, have somebody hold it out there, and then you can walk along and inspect the chain, get your fingers on it, see how it feels, and that's gonna give you an evaluation of what's happening with this system. Okay, and moving directly from the chain, we're going to go to its opposing system, which is the bungee system that helps the handle retract into the machine, also an important function on this thing. So a good way to test this is simply to pull the handle out and don't let go, but just ease up your tension and see if it has just a nice crisp pullback of the handle to the machine. A good way as well to test it is if you were to take that handle and elevate it on the cage, does it get stuck against the cage, or does it fall and droop all the way down? If it droops down, and if you don't notice the same normal retraction of the handle back to the machine, you know that that bungee could be potentially wearing out. It could just mean that it needs tightening, which I'll show you in a second. And we'll actually get into the guts here in a moment, and I'll show you how you can evaluate the level or the quality of the bungee as it stands now. Okay, so I've opened up the bottom of the machine here. This is gonna be an easy way for you to check the quality of the cogs, the bungee, the chain, underneath and in the guts of the machine. A lot of people don't know that you can get here. I've simply split the machine into two parts. There's always going to be, well, most likely there should be a plastic sheath down here. Take this plastic sheath, you'll slide it out. You can also check, is it incredibly dirty underneath? If there's a lot of oil on there, just things to pay attention to. It could just mean that it was over oiled at some point. And on the underside, you're gonna find a bungee system. It should be a simple blue bungee cord that is going to really tell you whether or not this thing is still in good condition. What you're looking for is the sheath of this should still be intact, meaning you don't want to see any elastic showing through like it's been torn or fraying. Now, there's a level of fraying that's acceptable with these. If it looks like a cat that just got out of the bath and it's unbelievably frizzy, you're probably gonna wanna address that later on. But if it's just a little bit of fuzz on the sheath of this bungee, you're gonna be okay. This thing's still in decent condition. Now, there are ways to adjust this machine and increase the tension of the handle going back into the machine. So I'm just gonna show you quickly how to do that. The bungee is attached at the top here on the left and the right-hand side. On the left, it's a hook that's facing away from you. On the right, it's a hook that's facing towards you. So I'm gonna grab the one on the left, you lift it, unhook it, and there you go, that's your hook, okay? Now, if you are lacking tension, the handle isn't pulling all the way back in, what you would do is feed this through and increase the tension level so that maybe now the hook sits here on the bungee, and that's going to increase the tension. I'd then go to the right side and try to mimic it, give the same amount of tension, and that will increase that tension pull on the handle so that you get more lifetime out of the bungee. As well, under here, you're gonna get a look at the chain, which you can now see, and some of the pulley systems as they attach the chain to the bungee. Get in there, inspect, right? You may wanna bring some rubber gloves so you keep your hands clean. Just know that, because there's grease under there, that's something you should note. How dirty, how dry, how lubricated is everything on the underside, and again, painting a general picture of the quality and the care that this machine has received. When you're done, by the way, you're gonna take that sheath and just slide it back in. At this point, the person that you're buying it from is probably going to know that you know a whole lot more than they do about this machine. So, use that information as you need in the negotiation period that you'll go through once you've finished all of this analysis. Finally comes the negotiation period. Now, it's very hard to throw out a range of possible prices for these things, so I'm not gonna venture a guess at that, but it is important that you go into this, use the information that you gather as a negotiation piece on this machine. Generally, it's smart, and what I would advise you to do is before you even go start looking for used machines, just check out the current price on Concept2's website or on Amazon.com. Look at what the current price is. Obviously, I always have the links to every Concept2 product in the description below. So just click on that link and it will give you the current price. Then take a look at what's on the used market and decide if the $100 or $150 that you could save going for a used machine is worth it in your opinion. Because at the end of the day, it's important to remember that these things hold their value pretty well. I've always thought of Concept2 as the Toyota of workout equipment because they last forever, they're easy to work on, and their resale value is pretty good. So let's say, I always use this as an example, if you bought a brand new machine from Concept2, it's $900 on Amazon, it's the same thing. You buy it brand new, it's $900 plus tax and shipping. Let's call it $950. You pay $950 for the machine. You use it for a year or two, or maybe it just becomes, a drying rack in your garage for a year or two, and you don't use it, but it just sits there. You could probably sell that same machine for $850 in a year or two, and you basically only paid $100 to lease it for a year or two or three, as long as you have it. They don't really drop in price. Take that into consideration as you're thinking about this and whether or not the effort of saving that money for your machine is worth it, or if buying it and then knowing that you could probably still get a pretty good used price for it afterwards makes the new purchase just as interesting to you. Now remember, I created a used buyer's guide checklist for you. That's in the description below. Download it, print it off, print off as many as you need, and use one sheet for every machine that you're considering so that you know whether or not the machine you're looking at is going to be quality and is going to last you for the lifetime and get you the value that you're looking for. Man, I hope you get that machine that you're looking for. And in the meantime, hit that subscribe button so you become a member of the PDP Army, the Push Don't Pull Army. And while you're at it, check out here our best workouts from 2019 that are gonna get you moving and excited and going on this machine.